Hey everyone, haven't uploaded in a while, so I'm back today and we're going to be watching a video by your boy Haquim, which is a Tankie Marxist-Leninist channel. Now, before we watch this, I want to give my opinion on Marxist-Leninists for anyone that is curious and hasn't seen my content. I think Marxist-Leninists are bad PR for the left. I think Marxist-Leninists are reactionaries that are trying to disguise themselves as progressives. I think if you dig under the surface, you will find that the differences between a Marxist-Leninist and a fascist are superficial. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way and my biases against Marxism, Leninism, and especially your boy Haquim are clear, let's start.
The Program, a podcast I run with Second Thought and Yugopnik. To quote,
Second Thought and Yugopnik are both tankies, just like Haquim. I have a video debunking Second Thought's atrocious piece on authoritarianism and his absolute thumping of Engels' own authority, which all MLs have. All MLs quote on authority like the Bible. It's like their Bible.
Our favorite authoritarian GT. Have these gentlemen ever seen these nuts?
Oh my.
Intro topics, history, memes, and me being perpetually tired. All of it is at your disposal over on the links in the description. And
Haquim is not funny, and when he's trying to be funny, oh my fuck, I hate Haquim. I hate Haquim. Oh my fuck.
Pinned comment. This video is a companion to our recent episode titled Tankie Discourse. Go check it out. Alright.
Don't go check it out, please. I mean, you can go if you want to lose your time, but they're just going to manipulate you.
Alright, let's get into it. Tankie is a term you hear thrown around a lot, but it seemingly doesn't have any meaning. The quick summary is, it doesn't really. Well, it kinda does, but the intention behind its use is generally nebulous, and the term is expanded so much as to be meaningless.
No, Tankie refers usually to a Marxist-Leninist these days that has a very weird obsession and does apologia for any country that is not American. Usually, Tankieism is classified as campism against Western countries and apologia for crimes and imperialism that is done by non-Western countries while condemning the imperialism done by Western countries. This sort of campism that Tankie is engaging is damaging because when you critique imperialism, like Tankie's claim to, you need to critique all forms of imperialism, including Western imperialism, but you also need to critique non-Western imperialism. Because I hate to break it to you, but China and Russia and other countries these guys like to thump and simp for are not underdogs. That is basically what Tankie is used to refer today. Now, the origin of the term Tankie was used by people in the British left wing to refer to people that made apologia and supported the Soviet invasion of Hungary in the 50s. It is not a nebulous term, it has a pretty clear definition and a very, very clear context when it is used. When you call someone a tankie, you usually have a pretty clear idea of their political ideas. So no, Haquim, tankie is not vague.
The origins of the term. Originally, tankie was a term that originated in the British left wing for those that supported the Soviet intervention in Hungary.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't an intervention. It was an invasion, by the way, Haquim. Come on.
The intervention is a huge topic in and of itself.
It's not a huge topic. The people wanted to revolt against the USSR, so the USSR entered with tanks in there. It's not a huge topic. It was an invasion by a foreign power, and if you support such things, which, by the way, classifies as imperialism, that thing classifies as imperialism, as foreign imperialism, because it was coercion against the Hungarian people by a strong and foreign power, Haquim. So no, it's not convoluted. If you really want to critique imperialism, you would critique that, because that is a clear form of imperialism. We are already seeing fallacies done by our boy Haquim, such as accusing the opposition of having vague terms and saying that the intervention is a huge topic on it of itself without talking or explaining the intervention itself. Come on, Haquim.
So take a look at the history of the working class movement in Hungary for a deeper dive. TLDR, it's far more complicated than libertarian socialist uprising or complete fascist takeover.
It was a complete fascist takeover. It was a form of foreign imperialism, Haquim.
Regardless, neither that Hungarian Republic nor the USSR are with us today, so why is the term still used? What people mean. Nowadays, the term tankie is mostly used by people, some which claiming to be leftist while others clearly not, to refer derogatorily to... Well, here's where it gets a little more complicated.
To Marxist-Leninist campists that do not critique and fail to see the faults of non-Western imperialist powers. Usually people that when they see the word communist or a red flag, they get a boner and don't even think about if the country claiming to be leftist even is actually leftist or is just lying to them.
There are a few targets. Number 1, in the narrowest possible definition, tankies are those that are more or less partial to the experiences and lessons of former socialist as well as current socialist examples, as well as their leaders, for example the USSR, Cuba, Vietnam, etc.
No, you are not permeable to the lesson of previous socialist countries. Why are you circle jerking yourselves so much? No, tankie is used against campists that have a very narrow understanding of political theory. Come on, Haquim, stop trying to make yourself look like an intellectual and stop calling those countries socialist. All of us know that those countries were state capitalist shitholes because you cannot have socialism with the state. The working class cannot be free under a state, and we have seen this over and over. And are we forgetting how Lenin massacred the anarchists? Are we forgetting that, Haquim? Come on, the lessons of previous socialist countries. And Vietnam is not socialist. Vietnam has a capitalist economy. Vietnam has a market, and the only thing I will give you to your quote-unquote socialist countries, which is the most charitable interpretation anyone can give to this shit, is that, for example, Cuba is a very flawed social democracy, welfare state. That is the most charitable interpretation I can give, and even that is a reach. Even that is reaching.
Number 2, slightly broader, a tankie is anyone who defends, or more commonly simply clarifies misconceptions around former socialism.
You don't clarify misconceptions, you lie and you make apologia for historically demonstrable and factual information because you don't want your pretty little socialist countries to be wrong, because you like... It makes you feel more powerful if you know that there is a state that claims to be your ideology. It is easier for you to just sympathize with a state that already exists and not do the work of making a revolution because socialism already exists. That is why MLs are born, because being an ML is the easiest form of being a leftist. You just need to do campaigning, you just need to do propaganda for a state that already exists and not do any sort of revolution. Stay in your white boy suburban house and don't do nothing.
A tankie also
have
usually...
Have you ever wondered why most Marxist-Leninists are white Westerners, right? Rich, white, privileged Westerners. Have you seen any Marxist-Leninist that comes from Eastern Europe, or any Marxist-Leninist that is not a rich white boy? No, you probably haven't, because it don't exist, because Marxism-Leninism is an echo chamber ideology, and when you step out of the echo chamber, it breaks down.
Presents a nuanced understanding of why certain actions were taken, which some interpret as running defense for something supposedly inexcusable. Number 3, broader still, as...
You don't provide nuance, Haquim. You do the exact opposite of providing nuance. What you do is not providing nuance. What you do is lie, do whataboutisms. I've seen your shit. And try to excuse all genocides that were committed, because let's call them by name, all genocides that were committed by your quote-unquote socialist states. You are ready to say anything to defend socialism. You are like a religious cultist.
A catch-all term for Marxist-Leninists and adjacent ideology.
Marxism-Leninism is not leftism. Marxism-Leninism is the worst thing. It's shit, because Marxist-Leninists believe that the state needs to exist, even though it is proven that the state tampers the movement of the working class. It is proven, right, by all of the quote-unquote socialist countries that the working class cannot be free under a state. The CNT-FAI accomplished more in 4 years than your shitty socialist countries ever could in 70.
Which usually encapsulate
more worker control that was accomplished in 4 fucking years than your quote-unquote nice and based socialist countries could in 70 or 80 years, Haquim.
Support for the concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat, democratic
Dictatorship of the proletariat is just, oh my fucking god, dictatorship of the proletariat is one of the few things I disagree with Marx on. You can't put proletariat after dictatorship to make it sound nice, and democratic centralism is just a dog whistle for we are authoritarian but it's actually democratic because we elect each other from one party and we circle jerk each other in the fucking Congress and we elect each other and we call it democratic centralism because we're
centralism, the active suppression of the bourgeoisie, a more involved approach towards internal security.
Suppression of the bourgeoisie. There is no suppression of the bourgeoisie in a Marxist-Leninist society. Yes, the previous bourgeoisie might be killed, but a new bourgeoisie of technocrats will be instated. Have you ever seen how they talk about the working class? These people hate the workers. These people see themselves above the workers. They talk like technocrats, the benevolent hand of the technocrat that needs to be shepherd the proletariat. These people don't want to empower the proletariat, they just want to shepherd the proletariat. It is pretty clear from their political theory and from how they implemented the ideology. They just become the new bourgeoisie. And a more involved security, what he means is that the secret police can come and blackbag you if you disagree with the benevolent technocratic ruler, right? More involved security. That's not security, that is suppression of speech, which no socialists should support, Haquim.
Security, economic planning, etc. This also usually follows the condemnation of the use of force in times when it was possible that it was warranted.
No, it was not. Most times when your quote-unquote socialist countries used force, it was not warranted. What about when the Red Army massacred all of the anarchists while during a truce? Was that warranted, Haquim? What about the Holodomor? Was that fucking warranted? Starving civilians. Oh, what about all the violence they committed in World War II? Oh, was that warranted? Oh, I don't think so. What about China's murder of the Uyghur people? Oh, was that fucking warranted? No, I don't think so, Haquim. Come on, man.
This links well with the general link with authoritarianism, which we'll touch on soon. Anti-imperialism, and by extension anti-Americanism too, fits here, so
okay, anti-imperialism and anti-Americanism should not be confused with each other. If you are anti-imperialism, you need to critique all forms of imperialism. America is the largest perpetrator of imperialism, yes, but it is not the only perpetrator of active imperialism. Russia, China, Iran, all the other countries you like to defend are also perpetrators of imperialism. And you need to understand this. You cannot just critique American imperialism and just that. And if you say by extension anti-Americanism, what you are trying to imply is that only America does imperialism, which is factually incorrect. Because what is imperialism, right? What is it? The force of your will upon a weaker country, usually, upon a weaker people, and forcing them to comply with your demands, or economic imperialism or colonialism. All of these things are under the umbrella of imperialism, which all of the countries you like to defend have committed. We have, yes, America is the largest perpetrator of imperialism, but we also have to remember that all of these other countries also committed imperialism, and not to be campists, because as leftists, if we are hypocritical, this only hurts our movement. If you really hated imperialism, you would critique all forms of it. And you would not let any form of imperialism slide. You don't hate imperialism, you just hate the West, Haquim. You just hate Western countries and other stuff. And it's okay, you can hate Western countries. I do too. But you need to hate every imperialist power equally.
I'll mention it. Number 4, much more commonly, Tankie is a lazy term used to demonize people to the left of the one using the term, generally intended to dismiss and ostracize said people without engaging or offering a counter-argument.
I have offered you a lot of counter-arguments, Haquim, and no, Tankie is not used to ostracize you guys, and no, it's not used as an insult for people more to the left of me. You are to the right of me on the political compass in every way, Haquim. Come on.
This particular usage case is most common with liberals who adopt a radical lib approach without any theoretically derived radical content besides engagement in electoral politics and an allegiance to American exceptionalism. A derived term, although even more nebulous, is red fascist, usually just shortened
No, red fascist is just another way of saying tanky. Come on, man, you're just salty that people call you out.
to red fash, but we're not going to touch on that today. And number 5, finally, the caricature.
We're not gonna touch on that today, but I'm gonna cry about it.
A person that doesn't exist with opinions that no one really holds, but it's used for...
Ariel, you hold these opinions. You have an entire video defending North Korea. Come on, Haquim, you hold these opinions. Come on.
Or so...
Come on, stop lying. Stop lying to your audience. Come on. If you lie to people, you know, you're gonna get found out eventually. Someone's gonna come and find out your lies and gonna debunk you. A lot of people have already done this. Like, you are irrelevant, Haquim. You are irrelevant. At least your friend's second thought is more relevant because he knows how to hide his abhorrent opinions. You don't even know how to hide. You're irrelevant. Stop talking to the void.
Wojak memes, as the internet usually does. It's supposed to mean someone who uncritically supports everything a socialist nation does.
Like you, Haquim, you support everything a country that calls itself socialist does. If China was to start nuking its neighbors, you would start defending Trotskyism and talk like a Trotskyite and say that, the revolution must be spread through war communism. Like, you would defend any act a socialist country does because you have demonstrated this in multiple occasions, such as when you fucking defended everything North Korea did.
These people don't exist. The USSR or China or Stalin did nothing wrong is a meme said online as a joke. No,
it's not a meme said online. Second Thought has a section of his video on authoritarianism dedicated to how Stalin did nothing wrong.
one actually believes it.
You believe it.
Likewise, seeing someone saying something on Twitter and interpreting that opinion as representative of the entire movement is silly.
It is, usually. When all Marxist-Leninists usually agree on this, although some Marxist-Leninists know how to hide better than others. Some Marxist-Leninists know how to mask better than others, which, funnily enough, is very similar to how the alt-right works. Some alt-righters know how to mask better than others. It's just the same with you. You don't know how to mask very well, Haquim. You don't.
Silly. In my personal experience, you won't ever see a more critical and nuanced view of, for example, the USSR, than from someone who has actually taken the effort to properly study that system, usually a well-read Marxist-Leninist.
No. Marxist-Leninists do not critique the USSR, because if you really understood the problems with the Soviet Union, you would not call yourself a Marxist-Leninist. Because if you were to actually study the USSR, you would understand that Lenin was a snake. If you study Lenin's work before the revolution and after the revolution, you would see how his work before the revolution had a much more libertarian socialist stance. But after the revolution and when he took power, his work changed to justify the oppression of the workers he quote-unquote liberated. Lenin's rhetoric drastically changed before and after the revolution, and if you know and see that and understand why and how propaganda and apologia works, you would not call yourself a Marxist-Leninist. You would not associate yourself with Lenin. So no.
We have a dedicated episode on that topic here.
Stop plugging your shitty Tankie podcast.
What's the point? More or less, it's a commonality of politics to invent derogatory terms for those that you disagree with. This example is no different. In almost all use.
Stop saying it's a derogatory term. People have corrected you guys so many times. People have defined the term so many. You act like Yazis right now. You act like fucking Yazis, right? Because, they all say, Nazis are slur me. You guys act the same. You just don't want to acknowledge that Tankie perfectly describes you. You use the same defense as Nazis. Tankie is a slur, derogatory term. Come on, man. Just own up to it.
Use cases I've seen, it's used exclusively online by mostly rad-libs and other quasi-liberal
Rad-libs? What the fuck is a rad-lib? Liberals are not radical. Liberals are spineless.
Types to dismiss an argument or person without engaging with the content itself.
No, not liberals might critique you, but liberals aren't good at doing it. No, anarchists usually critique you. Anarchists usually clap you, man. You're just salty because anarchists usually win debates against you. So that's why you don't mention us, because we usually clap you. You're just salty. You're just salty little boy, Haquim. Salty fucker, Haquim.
I remember anarchists, ANCOMs, and the like using it plenty before, but that usage has died down over the
No, it hasn't. We still use it.
Past several years, from what I've seen.
No, we still use it, my man. You just lock yourself in a room crying when you talk to one of us.
Regardless, a good point to note is that if we're using the term against people who recognize the achievements of former socialisms and
Achievements of former socialism. Oh my fucking god, what achievements? Because that was not socialism, that was state capitalist. Again, state capitalist. State capitalist!
adhere to more or less orthodox theoretical approaches to socialism, meaning Marxism,
Orthodox theoretical approaches. That would be Marxism. And it would not include Leninism.
Leninist ones, then this
Lenin wrote his shit decades after Marx. So Leninism is not orthodox approach to theory.
This term is a little more than, hopefully, an unintentional condemnation of third world or imperial periphery leftists. The vast majority, dare I say all actually influential Marxist thinkers of the 20th century, fit the Tankie label if applied uniformly. Even more so when looking at post-independence, anti-colonial, and anti-imperialist, read Black and Brown,
Come on, man, stop using buzzwords.
figures. The vast majority of active leftists globally, the ones agitating for socialism, are people who identify with Marxism and Leninism or an adjacent offshoot, who recognize and respect the lessons of former
That's not true. That's a lie.
socialist experiments, are usually part of Marxist-Leninist parties and uphold figures that symbolize the revolutionary
Marxist-Leninist parties, which are the larpiest groups you've ever seen. If you go to in a Marxist-Leninist space online, you will see how larpy they are.
socialist movement. In essence, the vast majority of the global left would be Tankie in that case.
That's not quite true. Anarchist groups have done more good for the working class than your larpy fucking fake ass leftists sipping their lattes. Your Marxist-Leninist militias are just propagandists or Chinese offshoots or intelligence backed militias. No, anarchist group has done more. Rojava has done much more for the good of the working class than all of your stupid socialist projects and all your Marxist-Leninist stuff. Anarchism has done much more for the working class than you could ever hope to do. And a lot of the leftists in the third world are not Marxist-Leninist. A lot of them are anarchist militias. The fact that MLs infiltrate them doesn't mean that they are the majority.
What does that say about the so-called non-Tankie Western left, though? Isn't it at least a little infantilizing and Eurocentric to consider that only the West has it right, meanwhile the vast majority of historic as well as modern revolutionary leftists had it entirely wrong?
That's not true. Again, anarchists are... There's a lot of anarchists in the third world. This is a misconception, and it's not... I'm not a Eurocentric person. Who the fuck? No Western leftist is Eurocentric. You just are trying to create a straw man you can destroy of a childish Western leftist, but you are not doing it right. Your arguments are landing flat, Haquim. Come on.
Likewise, the term seems to apply selectively. Those with incredibly similar beliefs and approaches may get the label on them, or not usually based on the level of demonization in common anti-communist American media, or based on how much that particular individual likes said figure. Concretely, Sankara and Castro aren't too different from Kim Il-sung or Honecker.
All of these people are fucking tankies. Castro was a paranoid dictator. Kim Il-sung was also a paranoid dictator. Come on. These people aren't leftists. Kim Il-sung established a monarchy and a statue of himself and his fucking son and grandson. And Castro was again a paranoid dictator. So come on.
On authority.
No. Fuck.
Another point usually tied.
No, come on, please don't talk about on authority. I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to repeat it like a parrot. Every time I talk to one of you guys, I have to repeat on how on authority is bullshit, on how Engels defines authority as a nebulous, on how Engels defines authority as everything. Everything is authoritarian in that, and how that is a rhetorical trick that is well known and a dirty trick right, that is used to make terms make no sense. I don't want to repeat how Engels does whataboutism in that essay and how everything in that essay is wrong, how it needs a very good rebuttal that I can just send you guys whenever you start mentioning it.
Into Tankie discourse is the idea of authority or authoritarianism. Before getting into it, the term is also incredibly nebulous between dictionaries.
We're gonna do the Engels thing. So I'm not a prescriptivist, I'm a descriptivist. I think that the definition of the word is how it is commonly used. And how authoritarianism is commonly used is how a government that basically restricts civil liberties, right? A dominant power structure, usually. A dominant power structure like a state. That is why you cannot have socialism within a state, because all states are inherently authoritarian. So socialism cannot happen in a state because socialism is not inherently authoritarian.
And various quote-unquote respectable encyclopedias, you get several incredibly broad or contradictory definitions. As with totalitarianism, it's more of an invented political term.
Not an invented political term, it's very well known, and if you want to get into it, you're not going to look at dictionary definitions, you are going to look at the political theory definition and the more academic definition of the word. This is a rhetorical trick again. Oh, dictionaries cannot define a complex political term, so therefore it's shit. Come on.
Used in attempts by particularly American academia to lump fascism with socialism. This is further strengthened by the fact that the same yardstick can parallel, for example, the US very well, or even better than the intended nation that label is being placed upon.
Yes, the US is authoritarian because it is a capitalist, imperialist state with a hierarchical power structure. I agree with you. But we must also admit that China and the USSR and Cuba and North Korea are also authoritarian states because they also have a hierarchy, and we also have to admit that there is more free speech in Western countries. Yes, it is not completely free, and yes, you can get censored in the West too, yes, but it is freer than China or Russia or other countries you like to simp for. And we have to critique all forms of hierarchy and understand again that socialism cannot be built in a state. So Marxism-Leninism is not socialist, and it's built on a faulty premise.
Yet it's rarely done. Typical government versus regime language in an attempt to more subtly shape what you think.
Fucking god, he's sick. Okay, so you watch my second thought video if you want a rebuttal of this part, because he's just talking like second thought.
For the liberals in the crowd, name something you dislike about authoritarian socialist governments and a government
censorship and black bagging.
Model you look up to or believe is viable to reform has most likely done the same.
Okay, so this is not addressed at me because I don't think that the US or other countries are not authoritarian. I think they are, but again, we must clarify that the countries Haquim likes are also authoritarian, so yeah.
Same at some point to differing extents. I would actually say the prime liberal democratic example, the United States, has done far worse on almost every account, but they're always spared the term or the criticism.
They are not spared the term or the criticism by true leftists, which are usually anarchists and libertarian socialists. And it's funny how MLs like to critique liberals for a narrow worldview, and if you look at it, MLs and liberals are the same, have actually a very similar worldview. Liberals and MLs both claim to be progressives, although liberals have an obsession with liberal democracy and not reforming capitalism and looking up to states such as the US or the UK or other Western countries. Now let's look at MLs. MLs also claim to be progressives, but also have a dogmatic obsession with figures like such as Lenin, Stalin, Mao Zedong, and also have a campist view of states such as China, Russia, North Korea, and the USSR. The MLs and liberals both claim they are different and progressive, but both have flaws and both uphold hierarchy. It is funny that they hate each other so much because they are so similar in nature, if you stay to think about that.
A fairly decent read I'd recommend on this topic is Human Rights in the Soviet Union by Albert Szymanski.
Don't please, because there were none. Okay, I'm from a post-Soviet country. I've heard. I know. There were none. You know, the devastation that was committed in World War II. You should come to Eastern Europe, Haquim, to see how your perfect and beautiful socialist utopia ended up doing to our countries. Come on, Haquim. Come here, Haquim. If you're so fucking... Come on, you LARPer, come here.
Likewise, to anarchist listeners, every prior example anarchists uphold had exclusive access to and use of arms, had labor discipline, an internal security apparatus, a system of prisons which included political prisoners, a hierarchical bureaucracy, exclusive control of sources of media, conscription, I could go on.
No, a lot of the most anarchists that were tried today had voluntary militias you could participate in, yes, and there was no bureaucracy, and even if there was bureaucracy, there were delegates that could be put down by the people at any point. Now, what I will say is that the CNT-FAI had religious persecution, such as burning down churches and locking up Christians, which I think is abhorrent because, unlike you, we can critique the missteps of our projects, and I can critique the CNT-FAI's labor camps, and I can acknowledge the CNT-FAI had labor camps. Unlike you cannot acknowledge that your states had them, but I can acknowledge that the CNT-FAI had them, and that next time we will not have them, and we will try to not have them. Unlike you, who just want to repeat what Stalin did. So don't try to compare us to you, because unlike you, we learn from our past mistakes, while you stay blocked in the past and do not learn anything from your past mistakes.
It seems the only successful socialist attempts at building something tangible gets this authoritarian label thrown.
That is not true. Ever heard of Rojava, which has stood very strong? I mean, Turkey is devastating them and stuff, but they still stand, right? They still stand, and they have considered mutual aid and all that stuff. They have built more than your shitty USSR, China, and that stuff. They have built much more than them, and they are not called authoritarian. Also, what about the CNT-FAI, which built more in 4 years than your shitty socialist socialist LARPy shit countries could build in 70 years? And again, I can critique both of these. I can critique the CNT-FAI's labor camps. I can critique Rojava's precarious position within the region and that it is not the safest place to live. I can critique all of these things. Unlike you cannot critique your systems. You cannot critique your systems. You are not ready to see how the systems your ideology built are authoritarian and bad. You cannot critique yourself and have any sort of self-reflection. That is the problem with you guys. You do not learn from your previous mistakes, and you do not understand that statism is not a viable way to build a socialist society.
On it. Likewise with this Tankie business. The anarchist examples were commendable, but in the end failed fairly early on, and in a way that spares them that criticism. My point is,
a large reason why we failed, by the way, is because of you guys. What about the Trotskyists that were shooting at anarchists in the Spanish Civil War? What about that? What about the fact that Lenin massacred the anarchists during a truce? You guys unalived us. You guys made us fail. Our supposed allies, other leftists, left unity, you and your shitty left unity and stuff. Yeah, you murdered us. You, not you, MLs in general, right? You caused anarchists to fail.
Methods before, during, and after a revolution will always be categorized according to authoritarian means, and hence pretending that revolution, the violent overthrow of one class by another, and the forceful establishment of some form of proletarian rule, be it a state or democratic federated workers' councils.
Okay, so, first of all, you cannot rule the state. The state cannot be ruled by the proletariat. Because if you have a state that has rulers that are not delegated and cannot be put down at any point by the proletariat, then those rulers are no longer part of the proletariat. They are part of the new bourgeoisie by definition, and are part of a new ruling class because they cannot be put down by the proletariat at any point. And as we know, power always corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And your point on revolution is brain dead. It is the point Engels made, and that has been debunked many times. Revolution is an act of self-defense against oppression. It is not authoritarianism. It is actually the overthrow of authoritarianism. By your logic, a slave revolt would be authoritarian.
As not authoritarian is just silly. If your issue is less the means and more with the degree of community control, well, this is a question of theory and pragmatism. Any genuine leftist would like nothing more than community control.
Yeah, exactly. You just admitted you're not genuine leftists because your statist technocratic LARPy bullshit is not Worker control.
The thing is, after a
Thank you for finally proving me right.
revolution and a civil war and a reactionary former landlord to fascist movement, foreign sabotage, internal spying, fifth columns, and you end up with a strong centralized state with a highly developed internal security apparatus and more restrictive ideas on certain forms of expression.
On certain forms of expression. And this state is not socialist, because first of all, the proletariat cannot put down the ruler at any point. Second of all, socialism must not be centralized, must be decentralized rule, right? And the state is centralized, so you literally just admitted that it is not socialist. And a security apparatus is no free speech. And again, you admit it's not socialist because socialism is free speech, by definition. Come on.
You can disagree with it, sure, but to claim you don't understand why it happened, or to refuse to recognize why.
I understand why it happened, but I can also say that it is not socialist, which would be a true statement.
Why is just silly. We discussed this point to far deeper levels on the podcast episode, so do check it out. The history of the 20th century paints a very clear picture. Socialism is the way forward for the actual majority of humanity, and reform has been proven a failure time and time again. See our episode on that here. This leaves us with revolution as the only viable option, which
yes, but not a Marxist-Leninist revolution that would just put in a new bourgeoisie, not a bourgeois revolution, a truly socialist revolution, such as an anarchist one.
Likewise mostly occurred as a result of a party constituted from the working class with sufficient
So, vanguard parties were not constituted of the working class because most vanguard parties appeared in very undeveloped societies such as feudal Russia, in which the literacy rate was very low among the working class. The members of the vanguard party were technocrats that actually had hate and contempt and disgust for the working class. If you read what Trotsky wrote about the working class, you will basically understand what the opinion of the Leninists was, right? And the other members of the Bolshevik, what the opinion of the Bolsheviks were on the working class. They were not part of the working class. They were technocrats that manipulated the working class with libertarian socialist messaging before the revolution, and they flipped it on its head after the revolution.
Political will and the support of the people.
Yes, they had the support of the people because they lied to the people about what they wanted to do. But he's not going to mention that. I don't even know if he knows. He's either lying by omission or he doesn't know it, which in both cases, well, that's bad.
The work of said party and the mass of the population may, we hope, culminate in revolution and the seizure of state power.
Seizure of state power. See, he's showing you that he does not understand how a leftist revolution should actually work. The seizure of state power is usually the goal of bourgeois revolutions, right? Usually bourgeois revolutions want to seize power of the state, right? And then just change the bourgeoisie with a new bourgeoisie, which is actually what happened in most of these countries. And as we can see, MLs haven't learned from their mistakes because they are using the same rhetoric as they used before. Seize state power. No, you do not seize state power to do socialism. You dismantle the state to do socialism.
This will naturally involve some level of violence, as no ruling class in history.
Yes, self-defense violence is involved in a revolution, but it is not authoritarianism, and again, how many times must we debunk you?
History has ever.
Stop parroting Engels like it's the fucking Bible. Engels is their fucking, authority is their fucking Bible, I swear.
Peacefully given up their own power. Not only this, but it's also logical to assume, based on the historical image, that once state power is seized, that fledgling nation will require all sorts of new organizations to protect the new
fledgling nation. See, he doesn't understand how that socialism can appear without a state. His mind cannot comprehend the fact that statism cannot lead to socialism.
Gains of the working class, an internal security apparatus, a military of some size, or nuclear weapons, or something similar. Certain levels of oppression against reactionary sections of the population, landlords, former capitalists, fascists, etc.
We don't need to oppress them, just take their shit away and treat them as equal members of the community. We don't need to kill and oppress them. And if we do that, it is only in self-defense because they put their army on us. That's what I think. I think we should use peaceful tactics as much as we can in our anarchist revolution, but we should be able to use violence in self-defense if they do not give up their power, and that is not authoritarian because, again, revolution is self-defense.
This will take.
And it also, the funny thing is how MLs classify anyone that disagrees with them as reactionary, even anarchists. You know what happened to most anarchists in ML projects? They were killed, and they were not reactionary, they were fucking leftists.
Take the form of prison or re-education, or possibly even
Re-education, he means fucking torture.
More severe measures if necessary, for example in the case of counter-revolutionary terrorism, has occurred to
Counter-revolution. Come on, stop using propagandistic buzzwords.
various extents throughout socialist history. In the messy post-revolutionary period, it's also logical to expect excesses, although they are undesirable and should be limited to the maximum extent.
Yeah, post-revolutionary period of 50 to 60 to 70. Yeah, the post-revolutionary period of the literal existence of the country. Yeah, until the USSR failed, there were just some excess, like a Holodomor or something. Yeah, post-revolution. Yeah, just a few years after the revolution. Yeah, just 70 years after the revolution. Yeah, like 20 years was the Holodomor, then there were the atrocities in World War II, then there were the political repressions in the communist bloc in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and the austerity policies of the 80s in some of the countries. Yes, the excesses after the revolution, and these excesses that have persisted for 70 years, up until literally the disillusionment of these countries. Yes. Just a bit, just some excesses. And these countries are actually a very nice study on how the state cannot lead to proletarian control, because the state is not formed of the proletariat. The state is not, does not have the interest of the proletariat ever.
Does that make all of this right? Maybe not, but you can see.
Maybe not. It doesn't 100%, and I cannot see shit.
Why it would be necessary.
No, it's not necessary. No.
Give Friedrich Engels on authority a read.
No, don't give Friedrich Engels on authority a read. Engels did a lot of whataboutism and basically destroyed the term authoritarianism in that pamphlet. That essay is so wrong and makes so many wrong points. Do I need to make a video rebutting on authority? Maybe I will. If I get enough likes and comments on this, I will make a longer video essay style video debunking on authority. I will put more work into that. Tell me if you want, because I keep hearing this stuff about on authority by Tankies, and I really hate it. So I want to make a video rebutting on authority. But yeah, all you need to know now is that on authority is a piece of shit work that basically destroys the definition of authoritarianism, and it is basically quoted like a fucking Bible by these people.
Anti-Americanism. This is an interesting point, the one of anti-Americanism. More recently, I've seen the label Tankie thrown around, especially concerning one's perspective on the US and its place in the world. There are some that claim Tankies uncritically dislike the US to such a point that they'll end up strange bedfellows to groups or nations that they otherwise wouldn't.
That is quite true. You really dislike the US and you point out its every flaw and which I agree, we should point out its every flaw and its everything. But what we should not do is accept and forgive all imperialism that is done by countries that are anti-USA. That is a pitfall you guys fall into. You are campist. You are actually, funnily enough, as campist as the liberals you like to critique. There's no difference between you and them. None. Because you both cannot understand how, for example, liberals cannot understand how the US and other Western countries are committing imperialism, but condemn the imperialism of non-Western countries, while you guys, Tankies, cannot understand how the other countries, Russia, China, USSR, did or are doing imperialism.
Or shouldn't ideologically support. Putting aside the meaningless content of that support, meaning if you're not sending money or guns or specialists or anything.
You're not sending, you're doing propaganda for them. You are getting millions of subscriber channels such as Second Thought and doing propaganda for these states. Propaganda is a very strong tool. So yes, you guys are doing support.
Information, what material reality is there to your so-called support? Let's take a deeper look. First and foremost, again, this is an incredibly online phenomenon. Just because some guy on Twitter said something doesn't make it representative of the actual real-life movement.
You all say it, and it is part of your real life. All Marxist-Leninists defend uncritically non-Western countries. All.
Likewise, just because your local 32-member Communist Party in the Imperial Core has some out-there beliefs, doesn't make it.
You all all do.
Representative of a movement that spans millions and the entire globe. This in and of itself should be enough to discount this anti-American Tankie connection. However,
China kills actual leftists. Actual leftists, anarchist, libertarian, socialists were blackbagged in China and are still being blackbagged. Do you know that? Just side note.
For those that believe in this connection, there is a strange dismissal of certain geopolitical realities and likewise actual anti-imperialist approaches. There are such things as primary and secondary contradictions. Likewise, class struggle above all is cute but falls apart in the complexities of reality, with the perfect example being the existence of the illegal settler colonial military occupation of Palestine. We need to be materialists about
Yeah, I agree with that.
this. Having a critically supportive overview of, for example, Gaddafi isn't based in anti-Americanism, but is based in tangible benefits that
Gaddafi is a dictator and there are no tangible benefits. He murdered, he did that bank heist.
administration brought to Libya, being critically supportive of the Syrian government's attempts at piecing the nation back together.
Assad is not trying to piece it's not actually factual anymore. Assad ran back to Daddy Putin, by the way, guys. And this video was made some time ago. Assad ran back to Daddy Putin after his regime was fucked up, and to Daddy Putin and started crying. His wife said that she doesn't like how she's treated in Russia. But yeah, Assad was a genocidal maniac who murdered people and went through cities and did purges, and he was a dictator, and his father was also a dictator, and they were a monarchical dynasty, and I don't understand why your boy Haquim is defending this.
After being ravaged by US-backed militias of all ideological stripes, doesn't emanate from an anti-Americanism, but from a sober understanding that stability under
sober understanding, while you do whataboutism and keep dog whistling with stability, proletariat, dictatorship of the proletariat, imperialism, anti-imperial. You talk like fascists. You talk like fascists under so many layers of obfuscation.
that government is far more likely, especially when the reason for the massive geopolitical disruption in the region wasn't an organic leftist movement to begin with. You can disagree with the reasoning, sure, but to claim that this number one makes you a tankie and number two is mostly based in anti-Americanism is incredibly myopic.
Yeah, no, you are the one who's myopic. I already rebutted this, I don't want to repeat myself, but you keep repeating yourself to pat out the length of the video and make yourself look more authoritative. I don't want to repeat myself, so I'm going to let you talk for a bit and see if you make any more points. If you don't, I'm going to close the video.
And shows just how little this term means. Secondly, calling whataboutism when someone replies the US.
You only do whataboutism. Like, I have a video on Second Thought. Second Thought literally just did whataboutism. And you always do whataboutism. Like, when someone says, oh, what about Stalin's Holodomor? You say, oh, what about American slavery? Like, I agree, American slavery was bad. But you can't just say, oh, like, I can just say, oh, look at that bad thing, the person you supported. But you just say, oh, look at that other bad thing someone else did. But the thing is, if you point out other bad things, it doesn't make the fact that your person did a bad thing untrue, right? Like the fact that, for example, someone throws a stone at the window and tell, hey, why did you do that? He says, oh, look at that guy, he burned down that house. That doesn't mean that throwing the stone at the window is good. If you do something bad and then you point out something else that is bad, it doesn't mean what you did is not bad. Understand?
US is currently doing worse things as we speak is less.
Yes, I agree. Yes, but again, we can condemn all forms of imperialism. And I have to say this. We can critique all forms of imperialism, all forms of coercion. Why only American coercion? Yeah, it's bad. I agree. We can critique. Let's talk about it. But why only that? Why ignore all other forms of imperialism? I'm going to tell you why. Because you don't care about imperialism. You're just a campist.
Less about ignoring non-American examples of things worthy of condemnation, and more a highlight.
You don't condemn anything that's not apparent. You do ignore it.
Of the supreme hypocrisy of liberals that have endless.
I agree, liberals are hypocrites because they cannot see how their countries are undermining human rights and they only look at how other countries, non-Western ones, are. Do you identify anything similar? Liberals are just a mirror of MLs. MLs are uncritically supportive of all non-Western countries and love and hate all Western countries. And funnily enough, MLs and liberals have a very similar background. They are usually upper middle class white boys or white girls who never stepped out of their privileged bubbles. Liberals and MLs are similar, and it is no accident that there is a pipeline of radicalization between a liberal and a Marxist-Leninist, because when the liberal becomes a Marxist-Leninist, they don't have to change anything about their worldview, they just need to change the flag they support. That is why so many Marxist-Leninists were previously liberal, and right? That's why, because it's easy to keep your core values and style of thinking while claiming to be a leftist revolutionary. You can basically become a LARPer overnight. You can basically become a cool new thing overnight. And that is why there is a pipeline between liberals and Marxist-Leninists. And the funny thing why they hate each other so much is so funny, because they are usually the same kind of people and have the same kind of ideas and beliefs.
Criticisms for everything non-American, but never even so much as graze genuine and principled analysis of the US, NATO, or other related entities. That doesn't mean you should.
We can have principal analysis of those. Why don't we have? But yeah, I agree. Okay, we can do that. We can do that, but what? Fuck it. I don't want to repeat myself so many fucking times. I want to repeat that, oh, we can do that, but we also need to look at how genocidal Russia is and stuff. I don't want to repeat myself anymore. Come on, Haquim, stop repeating yourself.
Should go, what about blank each time something is brought up? Actually, the inverse. You should be well read enough to be able to rightfully criticize the things
Well read means you should be able to lie well enough. You should be able to lie good enough. Guys, come on, learn to lie better.
Worthy of criticism, while being able to provide nuance to the rest, which requires nuance. It's a delicate process. That's why whataboutism doesn't happen between principled and educated Marxists, even on contentious
It does.
issues
It does. You do it all the time.
on the left. The importance of our past in light of our future. An important side note is to always study our history and learn from it. Dismissing it is either lazy or ignorant, and likewise arguing from oh, that wasn't real socialism, that was just Tankie's, makes you look
That was not real socialism, that was a state capitalism. And no, it doesn't.
Ridiculous, as you give the enemies of socialism ammunition against the whole movement.
I don't give them. Actually, you guys give the enemies of socialism ammunition, because by calling those genocidal dictatorial states socialist, you associate socialism with genocide and human rights abuses in the minds of centrist or moderate liberals. If you guys defend the USSR and other countries like it, you just make people think that all socialists think that way. You just make people think that socialism is bad. You actually feed the propaganda against socialism. You are the best agents against socialism they have, because you are the ones uncritically defending all war crimes and calling them socialism. Unironically, you are the best tool the State Department has to critique socialism. You guys, you tankies.
In the propaganda war, which the left has far less resource-wise in fighting.
Yes, and you tamper. You are even You make it even worse. Yeah, you agree that left has a lot less resources than others, and you make it worse. Yeah.
You can disagree with the collectivization of agriculture in the USSR, for example, but that disagreement only means something when you understand the material.
Yeah, and the murder of the people that didn't want to collectivize, and the taking away of small houses. They didn't just take from the bourgeoisie, they also took from the peasantry, which are basically proletariat, whatever.
Conditions that gave rise to the necessity of that change in the first place. Likewise with how it was carried out, how it progressed, what went wrong, and what could be changed in the future. You should be able to put forth alternatives. Same thing with the Great Leap Forward, or the failures of the many dozens of movements globally before even capturing power. Stalin and his consequences are important whether you like it or not, and without understanding what came before, we can't hope to be successful in.
You don't understand what came before, you just uncritically defend it, and you give ammunition to the critics of socialism by calling what happened then socialism. You are actually the ones that are not understanding and have a myopic view of theory and what happened in the past. You are the ones that are guilty of all of the things you critique us of, other leftists I mean. You are actually the ones that are guilty of all of the things you say. You are just projecting basically at this point, Haquim.
In future attempts. In essence, this is yet another attempt by me to encourage people to actually read boring, long, and
it's an attempt by you to lie and be a campist, myopic, narrow-minded individual.
Intricate theoretical and scientific work so that we can actually have something novel to contribute in building a movement. Conclusion. If you don't understand a particular perspective, ask why, dig into things. Simplistic answers are no answers at all, and there's always more nuance to be had. You're always free to disagree, and as Marxists, we encourage that. But the truth
Yeah, we're all free to disagree until MLs take power and murder anarchists.
truth of one particular tendency does seem to annoyingly always present itself, at least in my experience. At this point, Tankie is overused to the point that it becomes absolutely meaningless, kinda like woke.
No, it is not. I'll explain why.
For conservatives, it's a catch-all term for things
No,
I don't like.
no, it's not similar to that at all. No, no, no.
For liberals, it's a lazy approach to political engagement.
For Marxist-Leninists, what you do is also a lazy approach to political engagement. I explained why.
For those that consider themselves socialist, it's evidence of the ossification, lack of creativity, and lack
No, actually, what you are doing is evidence of that.
of actually doing the fucking reading among the Western left.
No, you don't do the fucking reading and you don't inform yourself on how actually history works. You should read more and stop fucking saying that reading Lenin once counts as research because you are just propagandized, please. Thank you.
From which these ideas almost exclusively emanate from what I've seen. Much more important is the value of learning from former socialist.
Okay, so he's basically okay. So I think he's ending. Yeah, he's ending. I've seen the video. He's gonna end. So basically, he made all his points. He's just repeating himself now. So I'm tired. I don't want to do it anymore because I already responded to everything he's saying, and he's just repeating himself to pad out the length. But as you can see, our boy Haquim is a whataboutist shill that critiques liberals for narrow-mindedness, while he is the one that is narrow-minded, and liberals are narrow-minded. It's funny that liberals and MLs hate each other so much, but their tactics and practices are so similar. By the way, if you didn't know, I am an anarchist. If you didn't realize that, I am an anarchist, and I think that this narrow-minded view of when the flag is red, it's socialism, it's damaging. So that's why I did this. I hope you liked my reaction. I was a bit aggressive and harsh on our boy Haquim, but I had every reason to, because our boy Haquim is, well, he's our boy Haquim, you know. He's a tanky shill for Russia, you know. So yeah, bye-bye.